all understand, that buy term, invest the difference is what we do, right? Like I don't need to teach that to you all. Y'all are good there. But what we do need to talk about is Primerica term and why Primerica term is different and better. And we're going to go through all that stuff. So kick your cameras on if you guys can. That'd be amazing. And we're going to jump right into it. So first off, guys, you got to understand that Primerica has an A+ rating, which is a superior rating with AM Best. Okay, so you could go and search the AM Best insurance ratings, and it's a company that rates insurance companies. All right, so Primerica is a superior rating. This isn't a like Primerica website that says it's good. This isn't like an RVP's Facebook page that says Primerica is good. Like this is an actual website you can go look at. And if you go to this insurance.freeadvice.com, if you look up the Primerica policies or Primerica customer reviews, not policies, excuse me, customer reviews, we have 356 reviews and it's a 4.5 star rating. All right, so if you look over here at this little pie graph, 87% are extremely satisfied, 2% are very satisfied, 4% are somewhat satisfied, 1% is unsatisfied, 7% very unsatisfied. God bless them, right? But 7% is very unsatisfied. So look, like the reality here is if you look at this company, you guys know this company up here, look at the very top. You ever heard of State Farm before? So they have 1,499 reviews. And if you look at the pie chart, only 17% are extremely satisfied and 41% of those people are very unsatisfied. So like you just literally pull this up and show them. You literally show your clients, like, well, what's the difference between you and somebody else? Well, what about Allstate? All right, look at Allstate. Allstate, 49% very unsatisfied, 14% extremely satisfied. Right, look, and the reason we're talking about this really quick is because you got to be armored with this stuff because you're gonna get hit with this, right? You're gonna have people that say, well, why Primerica? This is great, my coach this, my whatever that. And the reality is, guys, like you got to understand how this business is structured, right? You got to understand how our policies are different and better than the other companies, the other companies are going to run into. So there is something like this. This is the old one. I couldn't find the new one. I will find it for you. Every time you close a life insurance policy, you should be sending this to your client. This is like a Primerica fact sheet, basically, about life insurance, right? What's the purpose of Primerica? What's the purpose of life insurance? Why term is better? All of that stuff. Any variation of those things, whatever you're comfortable with doing, after you close a policy, you need to send them a fact sheet so that the green brain, specifically person that comes on and they look, you can see them and you can say, hey, look, this is what it is, right? This is how they have the options to go and do a little bit more research and dig into it. So we're going to get into like the nuts and bolts of term insurance right now, right? So 3 options at the end of any type of term policy. Number 1, you renew it. Okay, so you renew it. Number 2, you convert it. And number 3, you have to reprove your health. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Most companies, you renew your term coverage. How? It goes from being $30 a month to $1,000 a month or $500 a month. It just explodes, right? You convert it from a term policy to any type of permanent life insurance policy. And then you have to reprove your health to get a cheaper rate, meaning you have to then go and re-qualify again for life insurance. So guys, when we have these 3 different options, we just got to know as a professional what we're up against in the marketplace, right? So other companies, renewals are 10 to 30 times the initial cost. So if you look at this particular policy, the monthly policy is, this is term insurance. I don't know what the premium is. I don't know what the death benefit is. It doesn't matter. I'm showing you the price right now. The monthly policy is about $334.34. I believe that's what that says. If you look when the policy goes to renew, that's what's happening right here. It's renewing. It goes from $300 a month to $8,700 a month. That's $100,000 a year in life insurance on the renewal of the policy. Guys, and if you can see what the logo is on the page, that's a Prudential life insurance term policy. All right, that's one of our biggest competitors. Okay, so they don't usually tell the clients about that. Right now, this is the conversion option. They have an attained age conversion. So the owner, and this, guys, you got to learn to look for this stuff, right? We've gone over some of this stuff, but this is what you're looking for on other term policies. Everybody type other term in the Zoom chat, because this is where, like, I think y'all, I trust you guys to run into somebody who has cash value or whole life and be able to explain that to them. But this is where for the longest time in Primerica, I personally got tied up on these. I'd run into a term policy. I'm like, oh, well, Angie, they got term. So I guess like we're good. We'll just leave them be. Right. Well, the reality is they have only one age conversion option. The owner may convert this entire policy to a new policy that'll be issued at the attained age of the final conversion date shown on page 3. No new evidence of insurability will be required for the conversion involving the same or lesser underwriting amount as the term insurance coverage converted. What that means is they cannot get more coverage. Okay. It has to be the same or less. And then the underwriting amount, which may exceed the amount of term insurance coverage converted, which means the premiums, is determined by the company and represents the mortality risk of a new policy. A portion of this policy may be converted subject to conditions of the company at the time of the conversion. All right, so guys, what's happening here is they have the option to convert it, but they have to convert it to a whole life, a permanent, and a IUL, a cash value, a whole life policy, something along those lines. They do not have the option to keep it as a term policy. So they have the risk of being uninsurable, right? When they get 25 years down the road, like, I don't know very many people that 25 years later are healthier than they were 25 years earlier or younger. I don't know anybody that's younger. Even if they're healthier, their age is going to jack the price up. So when we know those things, what we can say, we can know that Primerica has a completely and totally unique product in the marketplace. How? Because what we do is we have in your policy, it's in there right now, all the policies you're selling. This is the #1 place that I would take my clients. By the way, our next gen products are termed to 100. I've been lying to you guys. I thought it was termed to 95. So you get an extra 5 years on that. But with our policies, guys, you have an exchange at attained age. The policy provides coverage until the expiry date, but the expiration date, or you may exchange this policy at any time after it's been enforced for 5 years to the annual increasing premium term insurance to age 100 plan. Okay. So sorry, I got to plug my laptop in. It's about to die. So I got to move my whole table. Bear with me, guys. Sorry. So where was I? So at age 100, if the exchange is for the same class of insurance, we will not require insurance or evidence of insurability. The new plan will take effect on the exchange date, and this policy will terminate. However, the new plan's incontestability and suicide preventions will be controlled by the date of the issue on this policy. So they're able to renew the policy, right? They can go in, they can reprove it if they want to reprove health. They don't have to, though, because if they give the same, they can keep the same, where is it? They can keep the same class. It's at the end of the third line over here. They can keep the same class of insurance, and they will not be required to prove evidence of insurability. So now they can have a new term policy on the back end. We're the only insurance company that provides a term-to-term conversion in the industry, period. No one else does it. So when you're sitting down with a client and you explain buy term and invest the difference, you get them to see the evils of whole life and cash value and why it's bad and why it's not good for the client. Then you can tell them, hey, look, this is the only term life insurance policy that you're going to be able to continue to keep as term. Because if you don't want a whole life policy right now, why would you want one when it's 3 or 4 or 5 times more expensive? Right? They're not going to. So you tie them down on term, and then you explain to them that we're the only term-to-term conversion in the industry. We have guaranteed insurability to the term insurance as well. So when they go to renew, if they go to extend it, they already have it. They don't have to then go and reprove their insurability again. So guys, that's super powerful when you understand what's happening here, is because we're the only company in the country that'll do this for somebody, that'll walk them through the process and teach them how to actually go about doing this thing, how to go about learning insurance, how to sell the right type of insurance. Very, very important that we understand that. So guys, this is how most term, actually, I would venture to say all term life insurance policies are currently. So the black lines that you see right here under the red line is a $1 million 20-year term. So Angie, how this is structured right now is in 20 years, they go from needing $1 million of coverage, Tammy, to zero. Just like that. One day they need $1 million, the next day they need zero. The only way that makes sense is if they win the lottery. And they're smart with it, right? That's not how it usually works. So Primerica, let me back up really quick, because their need for insurance, because of the theory of decreasing responsibility, right? You all know that. Goes from the top, comes down the side, right? So they need a lot now, they don't need a lot later. So there's a problem because they're paying for or because they're not paying for insurance, right? They don't have it, right? Pretty much nobody, very, very few people don't need life insurance at the end of their term. I would venture to guess that as long as you're still having to work, you still need an income, you need life insurance, right? So at this point, they might not need $1 million. Maybe the kids moved out, they paid off the house, the cars are paid off, but they're not quite retired. They still need life insurance, right? So this is a problem in this area. So what we do is we have the decreasing term to 100, right? So they come to here at the end of 20, and Angie, what happens is that the value drops, but then it rides it out to 100. So as their need for insurance continues to go down, the amount of insurance continues to go down, right? So we're pacing close to, if not right with what they need. Again, we're one of the only companies, we're not the only company that does this, but we're one of the only companies that does a decreasing benefit. 100% of the time, Primerica Life Insurance is the best option for the client. It's always costs less. It will always cost less over the total time the client needs insurance. So type total time in the Zoom chat really quick, because this will be very impactful for you. So let's say you're meeting with a client and they tell you, you know what, Dan, I don't need life insurance from you because I have State Farm right now and it's $20 a month. With you, it's 65. Right? So Tammy, well, for 35 years, it's going to be $65 with us. But your State Farm policy is an annual renewable term, or let's say Northwestern Mutual, that's more likely. So it's a Northwestern Mutual annual renewable term. Everybody type ART in the Zoom chat. It's an ART policy, that annual renewable term policy. What happens inside of that is every year it gets what? More expensive, right? So what happens, Tammy, is maybe it's $20 right now, but next month it's going to be 25, or next year it's 25. The year after that, it's 30. The year after that, it's 36, and then it's 45. And then all of a sudden it's getting more and more and more expensive. So what we do, Tammy, is we take all of the 35 years and we add them all up. We divide it by 35. We divide it by the total amount of time, right? The total amount of years, and then divide that number by 12. Okay. That math might have just hurt somebody's brain, so I'll say it again. So you're going to take all the total, the annual total. This will take you a little bit of time to do it, but you're going to go all of year one. So year one's $20. So 20 times 12. So it's 240 plus year number two's total plus year number three's total. You're going to add it all up, Glitz. And when you add it all up, what's going to happen is you're going to have a really big number. And then you go and you divide that really big number by the total years. Okay. And then you divide that number by 12, because that's how many months there are in a year. And that is going to give you guys the monthly average cost. Okay. And if that monthly average cost, Tammy, is more, which it will be, if it's more than our monthly premium, it's better for them to switch now. Why? Because 4 years from now, they're still going to need life insurance. And what's going to happen is somebody who's 40 years old right now, it might be cheaper, but when they're 45, their price with us, what? It goes up. Right? So, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, I understand that you have a cheaper policy right now, but over 35 years, it's actually $100 more per month for you to stick with where you're at right now. It might be a little bit more expensive right now, but year 7, it's going to be cheaper. Year 8, it's way cheaper. Year 20, it's 3 times more expensive for you to stay where you're at. And if we wait any longer, it's just going to continue to get more expensive from us. Does that make sense, guys? And you got to ask them, look, do you plan to cancel this policy in 20 years? No, I need to have it. Okay, well, then we need to switch right now so it's not too expensive and you can't switch and you can't change. Why? Because they need to reprove medicals when they switch companies, right? So, hey, Angie, you're healthy right now. I understand it's $20 and it's going to save you $20 to stay where you're at. but you have no idea what's going to happen in the next 4 years. And if you wait 4 years to switch, if you can't switch in 4 years, you're stuck in that bomb, that ticking time bomb policy that you have right now that you just told me you're not going to be able to pay that price in 20 years. And that's it, guys, you have to be comfortable and willing to talk to your clients and explain this to them, because they're not thinking about this. They're like, oh, my life insurance, $20. It's like, okay, but last month it was 18. So why is it getting more expensive? Oh, well, it's an annual renewable term. Can I explain to you how this works? And then you break it down for them. Does that make sense? Was that helpful? Awesome. Okay, so there's two costs to life insurance. There's the upfront cost. That's the monthly cost, right? That's how much money they're paying per month on their term. And then there's the renewable, or the renewal. So for us, our renewal happens at the end of term. Okay, it doesn't happen in the middle. It's not every year. It's at the end of the term. For almost every other type of term that you're going to run into, they're 10 or 20-year terms typically, or annual renewable. So when it renews, it gets more expensive, right? So the two costs, upfront cost, renewal cost. You're selling on both of those. You need to be able to talk about both of those with confidence, right? So our upfront cost is our monthly payment. It's like your auto insurance. You pay it every month. You hope you never have to use it, right? The other one, though, is the renewal. It's the back end. That's, hey, you know how your car payment, your car insurance gets a little bit more expensive every year or every month or every 6 months? Yes. Okay. Your life insurance is going to do the same thing. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. So we got to control the renewal cost by getting a longer term if you're financially able, if that makes sense. So we have to understand how to talk about these things. We always want to compete on a total cost basis, not a monthly cost, not a 6 months down the road or a last year or a hypothetical for 5 years from now. On a total cost, that means the upfront cost and the renewal. We have to explain that to them, because we're talking strictly about term right now, right? Not whole life. So if we're talking term to term, Tammy, it's always more expensive on the back end for them, especially with other companies. It gets explosive. It's stupid how expensive it gets. So we have to be able to talk about the total cost, because right now they know they need it. And they also know they're going to need it later, but they only have a 10-year term. And they're not thinking about the fact that it's going to explode. And it's our job to teach them that it's going to explode and show it to them. John, I love John Lawton. I love your little redemption financial picture on your green screen background wall. That's freaking awesome. I'm gonna pin John really quick so y'all can see this. I'm sorry, squirrel brain, but I saw it out of the randomly. Look at this, guys. It's awesome. You guys see that? That's so cool. I don't know how you did that. You're a wizard, but it's amazing. Okay, anyway, back to your regularly scheduled training. So guys, you have 3 scenarios when you're competing on term life insurance. Okay, everybody type 3 in the Zoom chat, just the number 3 real quick. You got 3 scenarios. Number 1, we are cheaper up front. That's almost always that's the case. It's almost always cheaper for them to go with us. Okay, so we're always cheaper on the back end, so we're not going to talk about that. But we are almost always cheaper up front. That's scenario number 1. If you're cheaper in the front end, it just logically makes sense for them to switch and go with you. Yes or no? Like, so I don't need to spend a whole lot of time right there, right? Now, scenario number 2 is they need insurance for longer than they have on the term. Okay, how do you beat that? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if I could show you how to get a similar amount of coverage or the same amount of coverage for a similar price or less, or maybe even a little bit more, but it got you the same amount of coverage for 20 years longer, would that make sense? Right, and I got some scripts I'll show you guys in a second, right? So that's the second thing. They need insurance for longer than they currently have coverage for. Or scenario number 3, they don't need life insurance at the end of the term. Dang it, I didn't put an H in the middle there. It's all right. You guys can, I believe you can understand what I'm trying to say. So they won't need insurance at the end of the term. All right. So in scenario number 1 on all 3 of these, take the app. Everybody type take the app in the chat. You should always, 9 million% of the time, take the app on the appointment. I don't care if you COD it. That's great. Take the app. If they're serious about moving forward with you and saving money, protecting their family, we're going to take the app. Okay. Now, scenario number 2, you need to identify by asking a couple questions. Right. So here's the first one for you. Mr. and Mrs. Client, are you 100% positive beyond the shadow of any doubt that you will not need $1 of this life insurance in X amount of years when the term closes? Right. So 20 years from now, 17 years from now, 13 years from now, 30 years from now. This is how I sold one of my friends back home. They had a life insurance policy from a company, from somebody from our church. And I talked to him and I said, hey, look, like, are you 100% sure that 10 years from now, that term that you have right now, and your 5 kids under 10 years old, are you 100% sure that in 10 years, you're not going to need that $500,000 of life insurance anymore? He's like, no, we're definitely going to need it. Okay, great. Done deal right there. Closed, over, take the app. Like, that's it. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is if they say no, right? Or if no, ask, are you going to pay this premium when it comes due? So ready, watch, here's a scenario. So Mr. and Mrs. Klein, are you 100% sure beyond the shadow of a doubt that if anything happens 20 years from now, you're not going to need $1 of this life insurance? 100% sure you'll be 100% completely and totally financially independent in 20 years? Well, no, we're not 100% positive. Okay, so are you going to pay this inflated premium when it comes due? And then you show them the renewal price on their policy. Does that make sense? So you're going in their policy, you're showing them the renewal. Mr. and Mrs. Client, are you 100% sure you're not going to need life insurance anymore? No, I'm not sure. Okay, so are you going to be able to pay this $700 when you're paying 20 right now, when this premium comes due 15 years from now? Do you see the questions that we're asking, right? How important is it to ask these questions? It's vital, because if they're cheaper right now, they're like, when they see, holy crap, I can get a 15-year longer term for $20 more a month right now, but in 15 years, my policy is going to be 40 times more expensive or 20 times more expensive. Dude, like, if they have half of a brain, they're going to switch and go with you. Right? Like, I'm just being honest with you guys. So, and then this is the question, right? So this is the guy. Angie, this question has literally paid me $250,000 in the last 2 years. If I could get you a policy that's a similar cost, but lets you keep substantial coverage beyond the term with no health check, no premium increase, that would solve your problems that you'd be looking at, would you be open to looking at that? Something along the, it doesn't need to be word for word like that, right? But Mr. and Mrs. Client, look, if I could get you a policy that's a similar cost, but lets you keep the coverage way beyond what you're paying for right now, there's no health check, you can convert it to a term policy, there's no premium increases, and you get access to a living benefit, would you be willing to look? Would you be open to it? Would you be open to looking at it? If they say no, Tammy, God bless their soul, move on, right? Like, they're not very smart. Let's just be honest, right? So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, yeah, you are. Great. Wonderful. What's next? And so what if they tell you, right? So here's this. Where are we at right now? So this is what we're explaining this to them again, right? I forgot why I put those pictures there, but now I remember. So this is what they have, right? And so we're going to explain to them how, for the same price, instead of the policy just stopping at year number 20, John, what we can do is we can set it up so the policy doesn't stop at year 20. It just goes down a little bit. They still have coverage. It might be a little bit less. Their premium never changes, but now they have life insurance until they're 100, instead of for just the next 20 years or the next 15 years or 30 years or whatever the term is. Does that make sense? That might have been a little bit confusing. I'm sorry if that wasn't structured right. Does anybody have any questions over those last like 5 slides?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. What's up, John?
Sorry, I'm driving. So I know I jumped in a little late, but just a question on this area. So decreasing theory of decreasing responsibility indicates that as they get older, they no longer may need life insurance because they'll be self-insured. So how do we use that in conjunction with this, that we say, are you sure you're not going to need it?
That's this right here, this exact question, right? Are you 100% sure that you're going to need it? We teach people to buy term and invest the difference, right? But let's be honest, like, most people aren't super disciplined with that. Okay, I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just being real with you guys, right? So we teach them to buy term insurance, and they're not always investing, or they're not investing as much as we should. Or, John, they dip into their IRA and they take some money out, right, to go buy a house, and they don't put it back, or they do something like that, and that messes up the plan, right? Or a medical bill comes up, whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios that could happen there. And so that's why, when you're talking to them, the theory of decreasing responsibility, if you look at the graph, I know you're driving, so please don't get into an accident, but if you look at this right here, this is the theory of decreasing responsibility. They need it, and they need less as time goes on. So with our policy, it's built on the back end to have that theory of decreasing responsibility curve until they're 100. Right? Does that make sense, guys? So we're armoring, we're reinforcing the theory of decreasing responsibility with our decreasing term to 100. All right, we're keeping it going. So again, take the app, right? Everybody type take the app in the Zoom chat again. Why? Because you just presented a crap ton of value. So take the dang app. Take a COD. Hey, look, like I know you want to think about it. We're going to take the application. There's no payment coming out right now. We're going to go COD. We're going to make sure we can get this issued for you. We're going to get back together next week for your FNA anyway, right? And we'll go over it all there. Cool. Awesome. Great. Well, what if the client says, no, actually, I'm not going to need the coverage? Let's say, John, this is a scenario where one of your clients actually did what you told them to do. They bought term, they invested the difference, they invested wisely, they never touched their money, they followed the plan. Well, now you're running into somebody, or you're running into somebody, Angie, who let's say they're making great money, they're on track. Maybe they didn't work with you, but they're working with somebody else, but their term insurance policy is like what we just talked about. Well, this is a very rare instance, honestly, that you're going to come across somebody that's like, I don't need life insurance. I'm fine. I'm going to be, I'll be financially independent. It doesn't happen very often, but when you do, this is how you address that. Awesome. Hey, super proud of you. That's amazing. Right now, you have $1 million of coverage. 20 years from now, you're not going to need any. So, and you draw this for them on the way down, this overage that you have right here is a waste of your money. You could be investing it and putting it to use for you, be investing it for your kids. You could be saving it for your retirement, putting that into your investments, right? Does that make sense? You guys got to understand how to sell the gap. We're always selling the gap. I talked about that yesterday on the sales training for those of you that were on. Like, they're here, their goals are here. The reality is they're probably spending an extra $100 a month in the middle. They're not going to see a big deal for that. But Angie, if you go show them in the investment calculator $100 a month of what that's going to do for them, you widen that gap across, so that way you're the only bridge that fits in the middle. Does it make sense? You guys need to get very good at driving a wedge in the middle. Next week, we're talking about closing life insurance. Like, that's the 301 next week. So make sure you guys are ready for that. It's going to be awesome. But like, we're driving a wedge right down in the middle, and we are planting our Primerica flag in the middle, right? Why? Because we're going to build this. Ask them. This is the question. So, Angie, if I could get you a policy that more accurately reflects your need for life insurance and it costs you less than what you're currently paying over the next X amount of years, I forgot to put that in there, but would you be willing to switch, or would you like to continue paying for more coverage than what you need at a higher price? Let's be honest, if they're investing properly and they are in this category, they're smart people. So if you're like, hey, look, if we can get you to pay less money for the same amount of life insurance and it accurately reflects what you need, would you want to pay less money for that? Would you switch and pay less, or would you want to continue wasting your money and paying more than you need to? Well, I would switch. Obviously, they're going to almost always are going to say I would switch. Okay, great. This is how you do it, right? I talked about this the other day, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point on a wake up call, right? What do? We do $1 million, right? Or a $250,000 10-year term. And then we do another $250,000 15-year term, and then $500,000 on a 20. I don't care how you structure this. The point is, you break these bands down and you kind of stair step this for people, and you make it a custom policy, right? Another way I would say this to the client is, hey, Bob, if I could set you up with a policy that was customized for you and not just a blanket 20-year term, but if I could build something that really matched your needs over time and your projections on your investments, would you be open to saving money and getting a better product and fit your needs specifically? Dude, they're always, if you come at them like that, they'll be like, yes, I'm in. But if you're like, well, your term sucks, they don't care. They don't need it in 20 years. Right? But you got to meet them where they're at. All right. So guys, next week, we're going to go over closing life insurance. I got done a little bit early because there was only a few of you guys on here, and I could see most of your faces most of the time. Does anybody have any questions about anything at all that we just went over at all? No dumb questions. Ask them. Otherwise, we'll just jump into 201. We'll all transfer over to Nate's class for a few minutes and catch the end of the RVP training. Anybody got any questions?
I got one more here for you.
Go for it.
So I know I recognize this from Ian Pruckner's video, but in regards to the decreasing term and creating basically a customized plan, does it make sense? Does it make sense to do basically like a 30, a 20, and a 10 as separate policies that you put together all at once? Or does it make sense to just do one large 30 and then just do the decreasing term after that? Can you describe the difference between that? If that makes
Yeah,
sense?
it would just depend on the client's needs. So like, let's say, okay, so here's a good example for you, right? So like, let's say that Taylor and I, we have young kids. Let's say we buy a house on a 20-year mortgage, right? And then we come and we meet with you 17 years into this mortgage, or sorry, 3 years into the mortgage. There's 17 years left on it. We owe $500,000 on the house. Well, on the mortgage, we have $500,000 in coverage, and that ends in 17 years. So realistically, we could probably take $500,000 on a 15-year term, or maybe a 20-year term, and that could cover the mortgage. Right now, our kids are 5 and 3. Let's say they live with us till they're 20, right? We need another 15. Okay, I'm a bad example. Let's say it's a 30-year mortgage. So it's a 30-year $500,000 policy for the house. Okay. Let's say $250,000 per kid for the next 15 years per child. Right. So there's another $500,000 total. So I'd have $500,000 on a 15-year term, $500,000 on a 30-year term, and then say another $500,000 on a 35, because I really wanted 1.5 million or whatever. But you can structure it based on the individual client's needs and why do they need that much life insurance. Right now, you're mostly going to run into situations like that, John, when you're dealing with clients that have higher debt, and it's usually a bigger policy, because we're trying to bring the price down and make it a little bit more custom. In all reality, if someone's paying $40 a month, like they probably have $150,000 in coverage. You're not really going to tier that out a whole lot, because it's more of a pain in the ass for Primerica, to be honest with you. And they have to have at least $150,000 in coverage to get a medical check if they're under 50 anyway. So like, you can't even do that for some people if it's under 150. So like, to answer your question, I see what you're asking, and it's not necessarily wrong, but the stair stepper, like the customized like terms, adding like stacking terms, it makes it so the decreasing benefit only comes on one, and then they still have the other million, and then that next one drops off. They still have the decreasing on the other two terms though. So I don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully it does. I'm going to move to Tammy, and if that doesn't answer your question, we can talk about it tomorrow morning. Tammy, what's up?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so when we're doing the FNA, because we're trying to figure out how much coverage they actually need. So let's say, for instance, because like I'm getting ready to buy a house,
Yeah.
but I have my coverage at 500,000. But a lot of people, smart people anyway, when they purchase like a home or auto, they get like the disability insurance put on.
Yeah.
So do we like try to factor that in? Because if I die, it's going to be paid off because of the insurance that I have on there. So do we try to factor that in?
For the home and auto you're talking about?
No. So when we are, like I said, doing their FNAs to try to see how much coverage we should have them to get.
Yeah. So I don't factor in like any other types of insurance, like just life insurance. Like if they have it and it's not Primerica, like I will just straight up tell them like, this is garbage. Like if you want to look at it, that's fine. Like, but I will tell them like, the other thing is too, and this is like a mindset that a lot of times people have to shift, is like, if you're hiring me to be your insurance advisor, or sorry, your investment advisor representative, to be your financial planner, and I'm giving you a financial plan, and you're like, well, I'm going to do all of it except for this, you're not following my plan. Like if you don't want to do the insurance with me, but you want to do the investments and everything else, like, I mean, I'll take the investments, but at the end of the day, like, you're not following, like, I've had this conversation exactly with people before, where I'm like, look, I know you want to just be investing. I know you're 22 years old and you only want to be investing right now, but look, like, you need to have a little life insurance policy on you. You have debt. You're going to have kids. You're going to get married. I know that you might not think you need a lot, so let's not get you a lot. Let's just get you 150 right now and keep it. Keep that there, so at least you have something. So if you ever become uninsurable, you at least have something. Right? And it's $20 a month. But so I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not 100% sure that I understand your question, to be honest. Maybe ask it a different way really quick then, if that did not answer your question.
Okay, so
on the FNA.
Okay. Maybe I'm confusing everything. Okay, so like you have your home. So did you get the disability insurance put on your home, so where if you were to die, it'll automatically pay your house off? So what I'm asking is, so if someone says, okay, well, I don't need, even though my house is worth $600,000, I don't need $650,000 insurance because if I die, my house is gonna be paid off and my family don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, let me see the policy. That's what I would tell them, because that, as far as I know, that doesn't exist. Like, I've never seen anything like that before. It's probably an accidental death insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, most likely what you're talking about. And at that point, it's like, yeah, I mean, so we got to jump to the other thing. But if like, I will call you after the meeting's over, because I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Okay. All right, everybody jump back to the other room.
Normal job and get paid like $30,000 a year. And I was like, you really want that for me? Like,